Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 1168. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've got our investment counselor, Doug, here with me, and we've got a variety of topics to discuss with you today, all important to your financial well-being and, hey, important to your reduced stress level. We're going to talk about some things that can reduce your stress too. Well, those both tie together, probably, right? Doug, welcome. How you doing?
Doing well. I was just thinking, every time we talk, we always cover a variety of topics. Some people might say it's because we don't focus, but I like to think it's because we're Renaissance people who have a broad variety of interests.
Hey, sometimes focus is overrated. Not always. That's the funny thing about life, You can't take any concept necessarily as the gospel. There's a quote about that. No rules or laws apply universally, ... including this one. So, that's one of the things. Yeah, what would you like to kick it off with? You want to talk about the rapper 50 Cent and that disgraceful music? Do you want to talk about this identity theft news scandal or what?
I was going to say, so first of all, you got to say it right. It's 50 Cent.
50 Cent, yeah.
50 Cent. And so, because it looks like he had a 50,000 square foot mansion in Connecticut that he put on the market for, I think it was about $18.5 million in 2007.
It was,
and it sold for 2.9.
You telling me his mansion was only 50,000 square feet?
50 Cent had 50,000 square feet. It was on 17 acres too. So, the thing was practically a shack.
My dog would love to live there on 17 acres. That would be pretty cool. Hey, by the way, you live on a lot of space. What do you have, an acre or two?
About 3.
Oregon? Yeah,
3 acres.
Wow.
It's... was it last October? I put an invisible fence around the whole perimeter for our dog. Mm-hmm. Because that's the invisible fence.
Does that work?
Where you have the control color. It works great.
Yeah,
works fantastic. It's
easier than a real fence, but that's a lot of land to circle with an invisible fence, right?
I know. Yeah, I think I had to get 2,000-foot spools of wire in order to.
and you bury them under the ground.
So what I did was on the fence line, I just went at ground level, and then on the front road frontage, I buried it under the ground.
How deep?
Basically, what I do is I just took a shovel, mm-hmm. and then I slid it in at an angle, mm-hmm. and then I just basically got my fingers dirty, and I tucked the wire underneath the ground.
So what's it, 2 inches under, or just?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh yeah, okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's not very far underneath.
Hey, folks, on this show, you not only learn how to make a fortune with income property, but you learn how to install an invisible fence for your dog. So very good. Okay, so so 50 Cent's mansion. Now, why is this? Everybody listening is like, okay, this is just celebrity news and gossip. Why is it important to us? Well, it is important because, as you know, Harry Dent has been on the show many times, and a lot of people criticize him and say, hey, he's always wrong, but he's not always wrong. And one of the things he predicted, which I think is interesting, and I think his philosophy of studying demographics and how they impact economics and investments is a very legitimate part of the dismal science of economics. He predicted that the McMansions, now this is not a McMansion, this is a mansion we're talking about, but it's just an example of the concept, that those would really suffer and languish on the market as baby boomers retired, as they became empty nesters, and they just didn't want to maintain these giant houses. And of course, this is a bit of an absurd example, but it has a little celebrity tinge, so, it's kind of interesting, right? So his 50,000 square foot mansion has been on the market for 12 years, more than a decade, 12 whole years. And after lowering the price many, many times, he finally sold it. He originally was asking Doug, what, $18.5 million, right?
$18.5 million. Yeah. He bought it from Mike Tyson for $4.1 million in 2004.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I hope Mike Tyson didn't bite off his ear or anything, but yeah. So he bought it from Mike Tyson for $4.1 million, put it on the market originally for $18.5, and what did he end up selling it for? $2.9 million.
$2.9.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And here's a piece.
He lost 1.2.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but all the time value of money he lost and the opportunity cost, obviously, right? And a big difference between his expectations. And here's the most interesting thing of all. His real name is Curtis James Jackson III. So now 50 Cent's real name.
Don't you mean 50 Cent?
50 Cent or whatever.
50 Cent.
Yeah, okay. There you go. Good stuff. So anyway, a little interesting story there. So we're seeing this now, listeners. We are seeing the McMansion glut. Almost everywhere, it is a big glut of McMansions, and they are pretty soft on the market. And maybe, if Harry Dent is right, they'll get a lot softer now. Harry really predicted, I remember this prediction back from 1995 when I first read it in his book, and he was talking about that this would happen around 2010 to 2013. He was a little late. So I guess you could say he was wrong or early, So it's kind of an interesting story.
One of the things I was thinking is, the upshot of that is that if you're going to buy a McMansion, make sure that you're okay with staying there for a really, really long time.
Right. And make sure you get a good enough deal on it to
make sure you get
yourself.
A good deal. Exactly.
Yeah, really interesting. What else on the agenda, Doug?
One of the things I saw, there was a really interesting article on Investopedia about how there's a push to make personal finance required curricula. The one that we always talk about is how there's $1.5 trillion of student debt. Mm-hmm. I also saw that the average household credit card debt is up at, I think, about $8,200, wow. Which doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of the listeners here.
Yeah, but to regular people, to the hoi polloi, the masses, that's a lot of credit card debt. Yeah.
Well, because think about it like this, right? Your average household income is probably like around $45,000, $50,000, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's like 52,000. But
yeah, 52,000. Yes. So you figure that this 8,000 is like 15% of household income in unsecured credit card debt. This isn't even attached to an asset.
Yeah.
It isn't even attached to a depreciating asset. Yeah. At least a car loan is at least attached to something that goes down in value, but at least it's an asset.
Right.
And of course, your mortgage is attached to a hopefully appreciating asset.
A couple of interesting bullet points here in the Investopedia article. 40%. I mean, this is so sad. This really makes me sad. 40% of U.S. adults don't have enough savings to cover a $400 emergency. Now, that is just terribly sad. And, I can attest to that because when I was a kid growing up, my mom didn't have that money to cover that $400 emergency, adjusted for inflation either way if you want. But I remember her being incredibly stressed about her car insurance costs going up and all this type of stuff. And it finally, when I got to about ninth grade, and, that's when I kind of noticed that all the good-looking girls were hanging out with all the rich kids in junior high school. And I thought, I think I want to be in that group. I like it better than my group. And so that's when I kind of started paying attention to money. But who wants to live like that? It's awful, right? So, take care of this.
I'm pretty sure that nobody wants to live like that.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, you'd be surprised. Whether it's their stated goal or not, you could argue that by default, they wanted to live like that because they failed to plan, and failing to plan is planning to fail. It's debatable, but listen, a large part of life is luck and circumstances. I will not deny that. Either way, it's just very sad. It's very sad. Median retirement savings for Americans between 55 and 64 is $104,000. But here's what that really means. It means $300,000 $10 per month invested in an annuity. That's what
that's
that
not a lot of
equates
cheese.
to. Yeah, that's not a lot. No question about it. You mentioned the credit card debt, $8,284, highest level in a decade. Student loan debt, insane.
One thing that an anecdote I'll put on that. So my wife and I, we just took our kids to Cabo San Lucas for spring break. My in-laws have a timeshare there. And of course, it was fun. It was sunny. Kids played in the pool, played on the beach.
Stop.
Whoa.
You let your in-laws buy a timeshare?
No, they
Shame on you.
I go, they had it long before they met me. They bought it in 1991. Yeah. But one thing I did do was they really wanted another week, and they were getting pitched by the people at the resort. And I was like, no. If you really want another week, just go buy it on the open market. Yeah. You'll get it for a quarter the price.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they got it on the open market for a quarter the price.
Okay, fair deal. Yeah, timeshares are pretty much a ripoff everywhere. But if you get a good enough deal on it, it could make sense. But the thing that'll kill you is the maintenance fees.
The maintenance, yeah. The thing that's actually interesting is that timeshare business is actually going away from the timeshare model, because the way that it used to work was you'd have a fractional ownership and you'd basically have an entire week that you had to occupy the unit. Whereas the way that a lot of the pitches are going now is
vacation clubs and different things, right?
It's usually some kind of point-based vacation club. Because I think the pitch that we heard when we were down there last time is that they're actually trying to reconstitute the contracts so that they're actually tied in with real estate versus being a fractional lease, so that you can, so that you're able to legally list your time on a site like Expedia. Because Expedia is really looking for premium inventory. Because for some of these places, especially like at Cabo San Lucas and Spring Break, there's no inventory. There's just none. Yeah. And so it's actually kind of interesting to see how the extremely overpriced end of the real estate segment is even adapting a little bit.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah.
But anyway, that distracted me from what my actual point was, which was that, of course, we were down there during college spring break. And so there were college kids just everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And what amazed me was how
drunk they were.
Well, exactly. Yeah. They start drinking about 10 in the morning.
Oh, it's disgusting. Yeah.
And they'd keep going until about 4 in the afternoon, at which point they'd get ready to go out for dinner. And then, usually they'd come back from the clubs about 1 o'clock, because that's when I could hear them in the halls. Of course, I was asleep by 9:30 because, I'm a parent now.
That's me too.
I've been a parent for a while.
Early to bed, early to rise is the only way to do it. Yeah.
Because I go, but yeah, my kids are 9 and 12. My partying days are long over. But anyway,
I can't ever imagine you as a partier. That's just.
I really wasn't. But so
you're not very fun.
I'm a lot more fun than you give me credit for, Jason.
Okay, well, I can't wait to see it.
I'm a lot more fun than you give me credit for.
You do have really good ideas, though.
But anyway, what happened was these kids are all partying this whole time, and I'm like, okay, no, I know that number one, partying is expensive. And I'm like, okay, where in the heck are these kids getting the money to party so much? Because I remember back when I was going to college, I was broke all the time. I was always broke. I never had any money. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together ever. I was literally rolling dollars to pay my car insurance. I was so broke.
I think we got the point. Okay, go ahead.
But anyway, I'm like, okay, they've either got really rich parents who are financing them, or they have a lot of debt, or both. And my estimate would be both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really sad, the student loan debt scam. We've talked about it many times. But financial literacy, now, does this apply to college or grade school or the whole thing? I mean, what are they saying here? Because it is absolutely disgusting that the school system does not teach financial literacy. And I was a junior achievement instructor for 3 years. I just volunteered, and I would go into a class 1 day a week. And, what I was really doing there is I was just giving the teacher some time off. So, the teacher could sit there and do busy work or whatever. And so I'd teach the class. And I did 5th and 6th grade. I did senior high school. I did 9th grade, I think, once, and, moved around. It was mind-boggling to me how these kids just knew nothing. They had no concept. In high school, I'd always get the questions about cars, right? Should I buy a car? Should I lease a car? What should I do? Use, new? What should my goal be? And I would help them figure that out and, give examples on the whiteboard. When I went to school, it was a chalkboard, and it was uphill both ways in the snow in Southern California. But that's another subject. Joking.
Jason, you're not being accurate.
Yes, that's right. I know. Hopefully nobody will sue me for that comment because it's not accurate. But anyway, it's amazing. They just don't get that kind of education. Financial literacy is a real thing. It's not math. It's different than math. Math is part of it, but it is a field of study. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, there's a couple of things that are counterintuitive. So I just think, human beings naturally think linear. So for example, you would think interest, okay, if I have $100 and get 2% interest, okay, I have $102 at the end of the year. But then if people are generally speaking pretty bad about intuitively compounding that out, and they're extremely bad at adjusting it for inflation, because if I get 2% interest and inflation is 4%, I'm actually losing 2% every year in real purchasing power. Now, of course, inflation is dependent on what you're buying, because if you're buying anything made out of technology, it's actually deflating. If you're buying anything that's real or consumable, it's probably inflating. But still, I think the reason why financial literacy topics are so difficult for a lot of people to pick up is because they're not naturally intuitive to most people. A lot of times they don't really figure it out until, not it's too late, but until they've already made some mistakes.
Yeah, good point. It would be great to see something like this. And I tell you, the student loan scam, it is just unbelievable how they are talking these kids and these parents into these student loans. We've talked on the show before about stories where grandparents, a little old lady grandmother, is getting her house foreclosed on because she co-signed on a student loan for her grandkid. I mean, this is awful. They are just scamming people left and right. That industry is really, it's pretty shameful. Okay, let's talk about a very important part of financial life, Doug, and that is, we talk a lot about making money and creating wealth on the show and so forth, but what about protecting what you already have? I have been the victim of various forms of identity theft several times. This is the crime of our time because it's not that likely anymore that your house will get broken into. Everybody's got alarm systems and so forth nowadays. So that's a little less likely than it was maybe in the old days. It's not as likely you're going to get mugged on the street. Of course, this is context sensitive depending where you live. But most people are on guard for these types of things in one way or another, right? But identity theft, it is just so pervasive. And I would encourage all of our listeners to never give out their credit card numbers. Do not ever do phone orders where you tell another human your credit card number. The funny thing is, too, in Europe, when you pay the bill at a restaurant, the waiter comes to your table with the credit card machine. That card is never out of your sight. Okay, now, if they had some sophisticated way of stealing it electronically, they could still steal the information. But the card is never out of your sight. The new Apple Card, in conjunction with the crooks at Goldman Sachs, has no number on it. There's no card number at all. It's simply a chip that you insert. So when using a credit card, only swipe or place an order on a secure website. Do not actually give the number to anybody. That would be one tip. Obviously, have a paper shredder that is a crosscut shredder and shred everything. Everything. Even the envelopes that have your name on them. I shred them all. It's just too risky. It's a huge problem. So this is inspired by this news story, Doug. And, you know, if you shopped at any of these 11 major merchants, which I guarantee you, almost everybody listening has shopped in the past year, your information has been exposed. Guess what? There are all these underground websites out there that have whole databases of credit card numbers, social security numbers, date of birth. It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was waiting for the punchline because when I was listening to you talk about the shredding your envelopes, I was like, okay, so is the next thing Jason's going to tell us how to make a tinfoil hat to put on your head so the government satellites can't read your brainwaves?
Well, that's coming, but we're not there yet. I don't think they have the technology yet. But Doug, I know you're teasing me, but you shred everything, right? I mean, you're smart enough to do that, I hope.
Anything I don't retain, absolutely I shred, yeah.
And a lot of times, if I'm traveling, you got to be careful about this too. I've never done this, but I looked up a YouTube video about it, because I'll have documents with me and I'll take them with me on a trip. And you don't want to just throw them away, okay, in some trash can, right? And so there is a way to basically effectively shred paper, not by shredding it, but chemically shred it when you travel. And I remember it's like take the trash bucket and put some soap and water in it and or something like that, and it'll make it unreadable. So I thought that was pretty cool, but I can't repeat how to do it. Okay, so data breaches are becoming so common. We've all heard the stories. Target, an airline, they all get hacked. Their data is breached. Okay, so Buca de Beppo restaurant, Planet Hollywood, Earl of Sandwich, Chicken Guy, I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, never heard of that one.
Mixology 101, Marriott Hotels, you probably stayed at a Marriott, maybe for our last event. The Meet the Masters was at a Marriott in Newport Beach. K Jewelers, Jared, the Galleria of Jewelry, Cheddar's Scratch Kitchen, Macy's. I mean, probably everybody listening shopped at Macy's last year, or at least once, right? Adidas, Saks Fifth Avenue, Lord & Taylor, Under Armour. And that was hacked through the MyFitnessPal app.
Not surprised by that at all.
Panera Bread. I like Panera. I go there a lot. So that's just an example. Probably everybody listening shopped. Your information has been compromised. There you go. Wow.
And because I think the thing that I was just thinking about is, right, there's two sides of it, right? Side number one is the prevention, or kind of the perimeter prevention, which is basically to say, okay, how do you try to keep your information secure so you don't get hacked in the first place? And then side number two is, if you do get compromised, how do you make sure that you can get all your stuff locked down and then rebuild everything so that your life doesn't completely stop for 3 weeks?
You think it's just 3 weeks? It's way worse than that. I mean, it's, identity theft problems, they just keep haunting you and haunting you. Stuff shows up on your credit report. Stuff shows up in the public records, and it's not you. And one of the things to realize too, Doug, is that it's not just financial, okay? There are various forms of identity theft. Health insurance identity theft, medical record identity theft, criminal record identity theft, where someone can go out and commit a crime, be caught, and use your identity. And you can have a criminal record and not even know it. I've heard stories about a pregnant mom. Police walk up to her house and arrest her, and she didn't do anything, although not all pregnant moms are innocent. Okay, some of them are crooks, okay? But all of this stuff can happen. There are many forms. Oh, college tuition identity theft.
I see that one getting big.
Yeah, there are many forms of this. Most of us think of it as simply financial, and that is one of the worst. I remember once a few years back, I got a call from someone who said he was a police officer. And he said the right thing, and this is exactly what you should do. Never give out any information to someone who calls you. People call me all the time, and they say, I'm with so-and-so company, or I'm with your bank, or I'm with your credit card company, and I need to ask you some security questions before I can go on. And I turn it around and I say, wait a sec, I need to ask you some security questions. You need to be able to tell me something that confirms that you are who you say you are. You need to ask them the security questions. Now, I got this call from this police officer, and he really was a police officer, and he said, I want you to hang up, and I want you to look up the police station I'm with, and it was someplace in Central California, and I want you to look up that number online and call me back at that number so you know I'm who I say I am. And that's exactly what you need to do. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I called him back, And he said, someone went into a Bank of America in this Central California town somewhere and presented a check, one of your checks, for $4,600, and they tried to cash it. Did you create such a check? And I said, I definitely did not.
Certainly did not.
And so the bank teller got suspicious, thankfully, and, asked some questions, and the person ran out of the bank. And that's when they called the police. But usually it doesn't happen that way. Usually they actually succeed in the crime. So, folks, this is a big deal. You've got to protect yourself from identity theft. And, there are many monitoring services and restoration services out there. You've heard the commercials. I don't have one to recommend, but using one might be a good idea, although be careful of them too, because they get hacked. So the best thing to do is, once again, become educated. Commandment number 1, thou shalt become educated in my 10 commandments. And be your own best advisor. Protect yourself first. That's the first thing to do on this list, okay? Any other thoughts on that, Doug?
I think that identity theft and how you can, and just information security and identity security, this isn't going away, and there's going to need to be a lot of evolution. I don't know if there's a way to crack the code, but I think it's definitely a way for the future. There's going to be a lot of need to really figure out ways that you can keep your information secure, without becoming a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, right?
Yeah.
Because, all the paranoid stringy hair guys have been running around saying the hackers are coming for decades.
And they're here.
And they're here, but the whole thing is that, okay, do I want to completely stop my life just to protect my identity?
Right.
Probably not. And so the thing that we have to figure out is, how do you still live your life but maintain a reasonable amount of identity security?
Right. So here's another, I want to give one more tip, and this just happened to me. I went to the dentist last week, and I've seen this so many times over and over. On the form you fill out, the new patient intake form, it's, what is your driver's license number? What is your social security number? Are you married or single? What is your birth date? Like, none of that stuff matters to my dentist. They don't need any of it. So I write on those forms, I just write decline, decline, decline. I write the word decline. And they don't need it to clean my teeth. I'm going to pay with a credit card, and we're done. The transaction is over. You don't not need any other information. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So start protecting your information, and this will help spread the word throughout society. Refuse to give people your credit card number. Do not give a credit card number to anybody. Use your credit card. I mean, I use credit cards all the time. I love my credit cards, like Robert Kiyosaki says, but I pay them off every month, of course. And only type that in at a secure website on a secure internet connection, or swipe it, or, insert the chip. Do not give the number to people over the phone or in any other way. Do not give out needless information. Your doctor and your dentist do not need your social security number. They do not need your driver's license. And, well, the doctor probably needs your date of birth, okay? But that's it. So start being stingy with information, okay? You really got to do that.
Yeah.
Folks, one more thing. On your social media accounts, change your date of birth. Don't let your 5,000 Facebook friends know your exact birthday. There's another tip for you, okay? So, Doug, we got to wrap it up. Thank you for joining me today. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no problem. Basically just that I hate to copy your saying, but it is I'll say an interesting time to be alive, because it's both amazing and terrifying. But it doesn't have to be terrifying as long as you take some reasonable precautions and do a little bit of planning ahead. That's what we're here for. And if anybody wants to talk about how to do that, feel free to drop me a line and we'll talk on the phone.
Good stuff. And he's Doug at jasonhartman.com. And everybody, thank you for listening today. We will be back with another episode tomorrow. Until then, happy investing.
Happy investing.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.